No. It was Danny. What? No. It was Danny. I don't think it was us. What? Oh, that was great. That was great. She's giving me trouble. There's no one in here.
No, I gave it directly.
Oh, I didn't stop that. It's going to be a problem. It's not your fault, it's my fault. It's going to be a problem now. Let's see. Worked? 1 minute. No, he gets attitude. All right. It's very annoying. I have to close them. 1 minute, guys. I'll be there in 1 second. It's not your fault. It's mine. She's not going to let me do it, right? No, she's not. Oh, wow. She doesn't even know what she just did. Okay, good. Yeah? Okay, everybody say. We are on. Danny, you hear me? Okay. Oh, you want a video? Okay. Say it. Okay, everybody say. So like this, today's a big day. Mitzvah Hashem. I hope it'll be a big day. Mitzvah Hashem. Okay. So let's, I want to try today to start the last topic of this chelik of muksa. This says that what we've been learning till now was the various types of muksa. We learned klish malachta iser, klish malachta heter, kasar and kiss, malachta iser veheter, a malachta iser that has no shemesh of heter. And the last on this long list is muksa machmas gufay. And then you'll know all of what are the items that are muksa, the various types of muksa. The rest of the limud, at least in this siman, is moving that muksa. Sometimes actually part of the siman is about being miyached that muksa and changing the status of muksa. That's one part of the siman. But the most of the bulk of the rest of the siman is exceptions to say situations where you're allowed to move things that are even muksa. It gets involved in tiltim and atzad, it gets involved in graf shalrei, etc. But the last of this type of a section is the muksa machmas gufa. That's the last type of muksa. Now the truth is that the start of muksa machmas gufa is the sugya that we did on Thursday, and I want to just go into it a little bit more for a moment. The sugya that we did on Thursday was when you have a klish malachta iser that has no shimush of heter. That's the muksa machmas is a klish malachta iser which has no shimush of heter. The case that we spoke about was a candle. We'll see in a minute. It's not exactly the best example, but the better example is a lot of our electrical appliances. Like I use this as a perfect example. This thing is I can't say it's chasar and kiss. It's just that I have absolutely nothing else that I could do with this. Yeah, like everything in life, you could use it as a paperweight, but it seems to be that definitely was not enough for the achrein of the dan de shayla. So this item, what's the din of this item? Computer, you would take on the cheese of klish malachta iser, a simple recorder. It's a klish malachta iser, and the nidin would be what's the din of a klish malachta iser that you're not makbid to not use it for something else. You just have nothing else to use it for. You're allowed to use it for mekoymai, or do we say that it turns into a muksa machmas gufay? It turns into a non-kli b'negei l'chus Shabbos. What's the nidin? Something that's a kli for the rest of the week. It's a kli on Shabbos, but on it's a kli the rest of the week, but and maybe it'll have a shame of a kli on Shabbos. Or do we say that something that the rest of the week has a usage, so then it's a kli, but once you hit Shabbos, it no longer has a usage. Because once you hit Shabbos, and there's absolutely nothing that you could do with her, because for its own function, you obviously can't use it, and there's nothing else to do. So then it'll take on the status of this new evil muksa, which will be like a chesaron kiss. It'll be muksa machmas gufay, and the nafkamina is you had nothing you could do with it anyways, right? So the nafkamina is will you be able to move it l'tzarech v'kaymai. The example that we started speaking about was a candle, and we'll see if it's far from examples. Shkacha pratis or something like that. Somebody told me that this Shabbos, his wife accidentally left a box of candles, mamish smack on the table, like mamish exactly the case. So what's the halacha? You're allowed to move the box of candles, gets involved, and even if it is a kli shemlan yeser, but it's not exactly necessarily tzarech mekayma, we have to get involved. But the first need, then you have to dan, is it a kli shemlan yeser, or is this what they call in this English books? They call it a category 2, and in the Hebrew books they call it a sug bet, a second type of a kli shemlan yeser. In a lot of the books it says, kli shemlan yeser, you can move the tzarech from mekayma. But if it's a second category, they write like shaylos chacham and things like that. So let's at least, let's try to dan this together and see what the great chachamim said. What would they say if you called them up and you asked them, can I move the candles? Can I move this recorder, et cetera, et cetera? This is the first limud in Muksa Makmas Gufay, because it's the first example. The whole idea of Muksa Makmas Gufay is it's a non-kli. In other words, chesaron kiss is too much a kli. It's the most kli that there is. And then that's why you're makbid gomer. But then you have something which is a non-kli. Examples of non-kalim might be dirt, it might be rocks, it might be eggshells. That's examples of non-kalim. That's one type of a non-kli. Then there's a non-kli that it only has a function on a weekday and it has no function at all on Shabbos. So maybe it's such a non-kli that it takes away its shame kli. Or do you say, no, something that has a shame of a kli on the weekday, that's enough that it should have a shame kli. That was the nidin that we started on Thursday. And we saw that Mishabru's Shita seems to be that this is a kli shemlach yeser. Mishabura and Sivkat Lamadal, Mishabura Chartzi and Reisha Intes Sivkat Dal. Mishabura seems to say that it's a kli shemlach yeser. But let me explain this a little bit. Let's explain it. There's a Ramosha in Hey Chav Beis Kav Ches. Ramosha is in the last volume. It was the questions I was asked to Rabbi Badner. So Ramosha was asked this question. He said, "Are we chayshish for this shita? That if you have, let's say, basically the candles, the recorder. Well, the candles we'll see a parsha in a moment, but the recorder." And for that matter, a lot of electrical appliances, are you allowed to move them? And it's not a type of an electrical appliance that you are makbid, that it's a chesaron kiss. It's not that type. So do we say that it's a kli shemlach yeser, and you're allowed to move it? The tzarech gufay mekayma. So there's no tzarech gufay, but could you move it? Ramosha said that it's not a problem. Ramosha, it doesn't seem like it bothers Ramosha to need it. And like when you see Ramosha, you sort of feel like you didn't even believe there's any question at all, which we'll have to see. But Ramosha, that's the chacham that we're asking. So if you ask Ramosha, this thing is in the way, could you move it? The answer would be yes. What would you now tell those ladies that left the candles on the table? She left the candles. So you're going to ask her, no, where's the candles? Are they mamish like on a plate and on a place where somebody needs to use that place? And she's going to say yes. So now Lefi Ramosha, what would you say? Okay, so it's a kli shemlach yeser. So you can move it l'tzarech mekayma. That's what we would all have said. I think that's what we all said. The truth is, over there, even if it's in the middle of the table, would I allow you to do a rama? I'm not sure if it's such a bad arama. Remember we spoke about that. It can't be a rama nikeres. Like to go and sit on the table is a ramanika. But isn't it a normal thing to place dishes and whatnot in the middle of the table? It's a very, very normal thing. Is anyone going to say it's a ramanikaris? Why does she have to dafka use this place? She should use that place. It's a very normal thing. It's a very normal thing. So Maisa, if the candles are on the table, if you're going to ask the great guy, Ramosha Feinstein, Zeichat Tzadik Levracha, he's going to say that you could move the candles, right? And just put something down there. And it'll be tzarech. Does everybody agree to that? That's what you want. Everybody agree? Mine's mamish. We have the answer to our shayla. Mamish. We did what it says in all the books. They write, ask a shaylas chacham, and when you ask the chacham, say he told you what to do. Right? Or Moshe, who was a bigger chacham? Was there anybody that lived in the world in the last 60 years that was a bigger chacham? No. Of course not. So he's the biggest chacham in the world. And Mamela, he told us you can move the box of candles. Why? If the candles is in a place, mamish, so then you can move her because that's mamish. And even if the candles are in the middle of the table, so you'll put down there, put their flowers, put there something, which is normal. It's not a Romani karas. It's normal. So beside the greatest chacham who lived in the last 60 years will tell us that you can move it and put something there. There's a problem with this. Sorry? They had a box of candles that they left there, but they left the box of candles. But you can have the recorder, all these things that have no other usage. Oh, so that we have to see. But the Mishabru at least said that. Now, that's correct. What Rabbi Defordiger is asking. That could be the need in here that we have to tan. But the Mishabru and Sivkam Namadalit, he said a candle you're allowed to move. The Mishabru told us a candle you're allowed to move, and he told us the Moriksia, the Yavit said no, you can't move a candle. And the Aruch HaShulchan told us, no, you can't. And that's the fight. The Mishabura holds category 2 is Kli Shemak Al Yisr, and there's no new type of Kli Shemak Al Yisr. And the Aruch HaShulchan and the Morek Seal say, no, it's still called, it's not a Kli, and it's a Gufa, it's a Muksa, Machmas Gufa, it's an evil Muksa, you can't move it onto a Gufa in the Mekoyim. So the Maisa, once Ramosha told us in this Chelik Ches that there's no problem of moving this type of muksa, at least the tzarech mekayma, there's no problem. So then I would say that's mamish gevaldik, because now we'll know that the Mishnah Moshe has a teammate in Mishnah. That's a gevaldik team. It's tzvei greisa edim. Sorry. It made it worse. So what's an ointment for it? Avada by Klishim Makdal Yisr, we said that Avada, even by a hammer or something where it's the normal usage of the item is to go and do an Isser, but Kavachayim over here, it's the only thing you can do with it is an Isser. That's it would be even a Kavachayim. So the Chayim, we did what we're supposed to do, right? We asked the Chacham. Okay, the problem is, again, and then the Maisa, do you have to feel guilty? You have to feel guilty. I mean, I'm listening to the Mishabura, so you don't have to feel guilty. You have to feel guilty because, like, when you read like a lot of the Kitzis Varim, I started looking into it a little bit in Shabbos and in the art school book, and they really make you feel guilty about this. Mamish, on the bottom, they bring Rishayim. It looks so scary. It's Mamish Pachad. Does anybody here want to do something? He's going to go to Shemayim and the Rishayim. They're going to tell him, you moved an item that was Muksa Mamish, and you learned Muksa all those months, and you were the one moving Muksa Tzarech Mekayme. What were you thinking? What do you think? So the truth is that it's not so scary because you have the Mishnah Berurah. But Maisa, you look at the Rishayim, and a lot of the Rishayim that they're quoting is not so scary. The Rashba, he says an example of a Kli Shemalach Li Isser. It's a Gemara in Shabbos Daf Lamed Vav. Is Chatzois Reis. Chatzois Reis is some type of a shofar, whatever. I'm not getting involved now. Maybe it's a straight shofar, maybe it's a smaller shofar. It's some type of a shofar. And the Rashba says Hagam, that it has absolutely nothing you could do with it, because it's straight, so you can't even put water in it. In other words, at least in a shofar, we'll see you can put water in it. But a chatzaitzis is absolutely nothing you can do with her. So what is it? It's a kli who has a function during the week, but has no function on Shabbos. And he says, so you're allowed to move it. He says, there's no tzarech klal. There's absolutely no tzarech. So, I don't want to go into all the Rishayim out of sight. I feel tziyush with that. I don't feel as nervous. Rav Vazna Zechron Levracha in Chelik Yud, Simin and Tess, he says, look, maybe it's totally in the Chakira. Yana Chakira that we started day one with, right? That do we say that Chazal came along and they said they made Gzeira on Kalim. Nothing to do with Hilchas Moksa. Nothing to do with real Moksa. They said Kalim are things you're going to use. And since you're going to use them, Chazal wanted to keep you away from the Kalim, from the Hammerloch, and from all these things. And they said you can't move them unless it's a tzarech of Shabbos or whatever. So he says, if you go like that, he says he has no tzad in the world that such a thing doesn't have a shem kli. He's right. If you go with that lumdis, of course, the Chazal asked this thing because it is kli. Without Chazal, this thing would never have been aser. It's a kli. It's a kli. Chazal came along and said, don't use kalim because you're going to come to knock in the wall, the nails and everything. So who cares if you do have usages for it, that don't have usage for it? It's Gzeres kalim. It's Gzeres kalim. It's a special thing. It should have been mutter gomer. It should have been mutter gomer. If you go with the other lumdis, that maybe it's totally in my exhaust das, then you could talk. I have no das at all because I have nothing I could do with it. So maybe it's so mufka from my das that it's out of my arsenal of items. It's like a chesrin kiss. You could hear some Fazner says, Maisa, it's totally in the Chakira, and the Ikirtzad in the Chakira is that. And you go, did I say that fast? Everyone understands what I'm saying. It's Pashut Chayr. If you go with Gzeres Kalim, the Chazal came along and they asked her. But before Chazal, she was Mutter Gomer. So what did Chazal ask her? They asked her, meaning Chazal, in case we don't need Chazal to ask, meaning this new Gzeira to ask her, that's something which was Kpeda, it was Ois Kli. Here, it's not Ois Kli. Chazal came along and said, don't use it. Don't use it. So I won't use it, but I'll be allowed to use it. Let's Okay, so that's, I don't feel too guilty. And but the only thing is that there's a little bit of a problem, And the problem is, and I this is something which is going to be very problematic. So I look at one sefer, and he writes like this. He writes, well, we know it's somewhat of a newish sefer. And he writes, well, we know one thing. We know that Rav Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. The reason I'm not saying the name, sometimes I don't say the name. I have my reasons. You know that already, right? You know that already. Sometimes I have my reasons. Here it's because it's like a new sefer, and it's such a dreadful toyus that he makes that I don't want the whole. You're going to lose the whole cheshik for the whole sefer, but it's new. I didn't look in the sefer, and I don't know if you should lose the cheshik. But this was a dreadful, just catastrophic, a catastrophe. He says over there, if you ask this question to the guy in Rav Moshe, we know one thing for sure: Rav Moshe is chaylik on the Mishnah Berurah, right? That's for sure. Says, what's going to be with the wax candles? What's going to be with the wax candles? Chaylik ches. Chaylik, he writes it like mamish, in print, black and white. Most people are afraid. Me, I just like say it and hope that nobody heard. But he actually writes it, chelik ches. And then he writes, which I agree, in these tshuvas over here, you see that a lot of them are a little bit weird to understand. And it's clearly not Rav Moshe writing them. They were clearly written by somebody else. And there are clearly things there that were clearly problematic, clearly troublesome. I don't want to, say provocative things. I never do, right? So, why are you laughing? I never say anything that has, right? Shashtem, that was your job anyways, right? So, I never say anything provocative, and therefore he writes chelik ches. This tshuva is for sure toyis because he has a dibros Moshe, which we know the great Rabbi Feinstein wrote. Rabbi Feinstein wrote dibros Moshe, that we know for sure. Okay, Agav Rav Moshe, he always wanted. It wasn't like in those days, you make one phone call and some gvir will tell you because you're the gadol hador. Rav Moshe wrote the igros. He only printed the igros b'chtei tzolgen geld to print the dibros. That was why Rav Moshe printed. That was the if you look into the Feinstein tradition, you'll see this is not like an old story, but that's the, okay. So Rav Moshe in the Dibros Moshe in the 534th page. So Rav Moshe says mefurish, not like the Mishnah Berurah. That's so terrible, right? Not like the Mishnah. And over here you have it. So that's it. It's chelik ches. That's it. So then the whole thing is fake news, fake Feinstein. It's fake news. The whole thing's fake Feinstein. Right? That's it. Well, what's the Moshe hold? Rav Moshe holds like a Bekiv Eiger, like the Morxia, like the Chazain Ish, like all of them, like the Aruch HaShulchan, that all of them held that what? They all held that a Kli Shemach L'Yisud that has no other usage. She is a Muksa Machmas Gufay, and you can't move her even Sarach Mekayim. Fake Feinstein. Fake news. So you got to look there. That's what he writes. He writes, therefore, all these books, they made a terrible mistake because they make it look like it's a Shaila. So it says, Mishnah Berurah, Rav Moshe, okay, Moshe in America, we should go to Rav Moshe. That's what he writes. It's interesting what he writes. Anyways, so let's see. You look inside Rav Moshe. I'll tell you now what Rav Moshe says. Rav Moshe, in the 534th page, he talks about a candle. He talks about Mamashar case, and he says, a candle? She's talking klishim lach l'yisud that has no tzarich gufay. He doesn't say those words. He doesn't say that she has no tzarich gufay. Listen closely. Does not say that. He says, a candle is a muksa machmas gufay. That's all he says. He says, listen, I'll tell you why. Because the Magen Avram, who are the characters in this debacle over here? Huh? Who are the fighters? It's the Magen Avram and the Yavitz, the Morxia, right? The Magen Avram, the Mishnah Berurah, that's what we saw. The Mishnah Berurah bring down this evil, dreadful minig of children that would take candelach to shul, and they would walk them, holding them to shul, and then they would either hand to goyim things. It's a terrible, terrible thing. What are you doing? It's at least a klisha malach the yeser effect the Mishnah Berurah. It's only mutal tzarich makoyim my effect the Mishnah Berurah. And the only thing, and not only that, the Morxia holds you're not even allowed to move it at all. And here you are letting the kinder lach, the kinder nitzim mechal Shabbos. What are you doing giving the child the candle to go to shul? Who said that? Who said that it's a klish mach d'yeser? Magen Avram. Magen Avram says klish mach d'yeser. Comes again the Morxia. Says not even a klish mach d'yeser. It's a muksa machmas gufay. It's evil muksa. It has no usage. Maybe because category 2. If you look inside the Morxia, anyone who says a different shot inside in the Morxia did not read the Morxia inside. I read the Morxia inside. He says explicitly because it has no usage. Because category 2, she has no usage at all. So if she has no usage at all, therefore she's a muksa machmas gufa. That's chloride, like the Aruch HaShulchan, like Rabbi Kiveg, like the Chazain Ish, like the Avnei Nezer, like all these great poskim. But the Magen Avram is not like that. Says Rav Moshe, he says, ich hab kasha, such a murdik kasha, bother me the kasha also. He says, Magen Avram all over, open up any page in the Magen Avram and you're going to see Marshal. he always brings the uncle of the Ramah, the Marshal. Punkt over here, he doesn't bring the Marshal. He brings the Marshal always. Who's the Marshal? So the Shla brings that you should know on this business with a candle, you have to be machmir because the Marshal was machmir. So Rabbi Moshe says, I'm holding here on the table a Shla. The Shla brings a Marshal. This is like a thriller, I think it's called. No? You have no idea what's about to go on over here. You have no idea. Right? It's like a thriller, mamish. Who needs the Goyish garbage? This is like a thriller. Rabbi Moshe says, I'm holding here a Shla. The Shla brings the Marshal. And the Marshal says, Taka, that the candle's asr. So it's like, why in the world does the Mogen Avram not bring the Marshal? So Muzayin must be he didn't have the Marshal. He didn't see the Marshal inside because he always brings it. He would have donned it. He wouldn't have just said so brazen that a candle is a Klisha Maktal Yisr and you're allowed to move it to Makar. He would have said, there's a Marshal. I disagree with the Marshal. There would have been a handle right. Just go straight and argue on the Marshal, not bring the Marshal. It's a Taka. It's Taka big pal. So he says, Muzayin, the Mogen Avram Nish Gezayin. The Mogen Avram didn't see the Heilige Marshal. If he would have seen it, we have reason to believe he would have been machmir. Because we find the other Chreinim, they also were machmir. He says, if you ask me, the greatest person who lived in the last 60 years, you have to be, don't get nervous. Satmar Rebbe said the same thing. In 1976, he said the same thing. If you would ask me, he would say, you can't move those candles. Not l'tzarech kufa, not l'tzarech mekayma. You have to be machmir, like the Ramah's Uncle Marshal. Good? As I say, it's mamish an unbelievable thing, no? It's mamish the biggest raya that Chelik Ches is like mamish is fake news. No, and that's it's mamish. It's important to know because now you see the difference. Much she says, but first not like that. Okay, so I was very intrigued. Such a strange thing. I found something even stranger. Why is Rabbi Moshe quoting the Shla b'shem the Marshal? Why doesn't he just like open up the Marshal? Good question. So I decided I'm going to do the same thing that everybody else did over here. So I opened up the Marshal. This was my, extreme amelis. I pressed the button on the Eitzer Chachma, right? Because I have this Marshal that has all this old print. So on Shabbos, I saw this shtickle. On Sunday, I opened up this Marshal. I can't even read it. So it's so hard on the eyes and everything. Right? So I pressed the button. They have like nice Marshals now. So in the Marshal, on the printed I saw, it was in the 223rd page. It's important because it's a little bit hard to find. It has a beer on the smag. It's a beer on the smag. It's not in the Sefer Marshal. It's not in the Amshel Shleima. It's on his beer in the smag. And over there, let me tell you what it says in the Marshal. Marshal starts out, there's a terrible thing that people do, and they move around candles, and they think it's a Klisha B'lachta L'Isser, and it's a terrible thing. And then he says, it's a Moksamach Maskufai. Mamish like the Shla says from the Marshal. Then he goes on and he says, but the Maisa, there's a lot of people that do it. And then he says, and maybe there's a riot to them because of this. And then he says, and now I have a raya brewer to what they're saying, and therefore it's mutter. And he brings a Rashi, and it gets all sugidik and very complicated. It's a Rashi, Nafkav Ches, whatever. And he says, and therefore the maskana I hold is mutter to move a candle, akopanim l'tzarech kufa, l'tzarech mekoyim. So now I'm going to say a very brazen statement, very, very brazen statement. Ready for this? If Rav Moshe would have seen the Marshal inside, he would have told us that it's bar, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that you are going to paskin, that candles are Klisha Machtal Yeser, that you can move, l'tzarech kufa, l'tzarech mekoyim. No shadow in the world. Where did I learn that from? Rabbi Feinstein. Rabbi Feinstein told us, what did he say? He said, if the Mogen Avram is saying, if he would have seen the Marshal, then he would never have said this. Okay? Moshe didn't see the Marshal. It's bar, because he only quoted it. Now, what happened here with the Shla? I do not know. So there's something going on over here that nobody ever saw this Marshal. It's a little bit scary until Shagi counts. Right? I'm also scared. But I know, ich habe mir zu sagen, aber was kann ich tun? Da sagen damals, the Mishnah Berurah brings the Mogen Avram. The Mogen Avram saw the Marshal possibly. I don't know. But you do have to look in the Marshal. And the Marshal says a candle is a Klish Malachta L'Isser. That is mutter. Now, the only thing is, so that's why it's beyond the shadow of a doubt now. What's with Chelik Ches? So now it's like everything else, like I heard from Rabbi Yashiv, it's L'Mechash L'Mvai. It's like, there's definitely things in there that Rav Moshe Zicher did hold of. And over here, we have no reason to believe Rav Moshe doesn't hold of it. Adarabba, we see his Ikanati, it was really to go with the Mogen Avram unless he was scared of the Marshal. Now, Derech Hagav, which was Rabbi DeFreudiger was asking, that the candle would have been a little bit different. there could have been a tzad that Ramosha Avada has a tzad already that a candle is different than a klishim lachtal yeser, not without a shimush. What would have been the difference? In order to, Ramosha already at least opened up the door for us that even though now we have no reason to believe anyways that it's not the same Ramosha, we could just say that Avada there's some type of a chilek between the klishim lachtal yeser that has no usage at all and the candle. What would be the chilek? So we mentioned that it could be the chilek, and in Mitzvah Shem we're going to talk about this more, that a candle is something that gets used up, and once something gets used up, so maybe that doesn't have a shame of a shemesh kli, and therefore it's itachin. We grounded don't hold like this, and even Rav Moshe won't hold like this. But let's say I'll find you achreinim, that I'll tell you a candle is a gufay, it's not going to be a raya klapi arshayla. Now it happens to be that the more ksiya, I told you I saw it inside, and he doesn't go like that. He says a candle is not a kli, and the reason she's not a kli is not because she gets used up, but because she has no shemesh shel heter. And therefore he says a candle which has no shemesh shel heter is like any item that has no shemesh shel heter, you can't move it to a gub mekayma. However, the Mishabur is chaylik, and that l'chayra is the psak halacha. So now, who holds like that? Just to give a list, the Chayodam, the Graz, the Der Chaim, and the Magen Avram, and the Kitzer, and the Mishabura, they're all makel on a candle. So if you're makel on a candle, you're for sure makel on the shaila, okay? Because we saw it's on the other. If you say the other way, if you're not makel on the candle, so then we could still maybe be makel on the shaila. But if you have all of these, the Chayodam, the Graz, the Archaim, the Magen Avram, the Kitzer, and the Mishabur, they're all makel on candle, then for sure you're makel on the shaila. L'chayra. Adkan. No, he clearly didn't have the Marsha. I see it. What? They bring the shlai. The ground of the shlai they didn't see inside, but the shlai. Oh no, the pais can bring the shlai. They bring the shlai. The pais can bring the shlai. It's very, very difficult. Very, very schwer. I don't know, like that. I don't know. It could be different gears. I don't know. How long have you been learning by Shagi Kallus? See, he knows the Malach here. He knows. But Ramosha, you know. No, it is a little bit scary. Ramosha. Put Ramosha on one side of the world and you put everybody else on the other and he wins. He won't win against the Mishabura, but you know, it moves. It moves. Right? What? What's wrong with the Marshal's yard type with that? What are you talking about? Okay. Now, but it's like, let me, before we go deep into Gufay, now let's talk a few cases, Tachlis. And this is where I offer my own opinion. Till now, I never offered an opinion about this shot. Now I'm going to offer an opinion. Because, you know, I said the other day, if you have a reason to be machmir, if you have reason to be makel, if you have an ability to be machmir, why not? Just use it with your elbow or whatever. But, you know, I'm just going to say a few of my auras now. This is my own opinion. It's, you know, listen, what's the quintessential dogma, if you ask me, of something that has no other usage? I would have thought a shofar. If you would ask me, what's a good example of something that has no other usage except to do an isser with, it's a shofar. Is there anything that, now I mentioned today, it could be some people are makbid on not using a shofar, bichlal for anything they're careful, like the truth is, like I told you, I have a shofar. I have one shofar I'm very careful with. I have one shofar I'm not so careful with, right? So one shofar I'm very, very careful with. I can hear she's a chesser and kiss because you can be so careful with it and you can only use it for isser and therefore you'll never use it. So maybe she's a chesser and kiss. Just a moment. All right. And then I have the other shofar where if you'd ask me, I would say, this is a great way to give a shir. Nilchus Muksa. She's a chesron kiss. She's category 2. That this shofar, because there's nothing you could do with it except for blow and do an isser, right? So then, that's if you would have given me an example of a category 2, I would have said that's the greatest example of category 2. What do you want to say? Sorry. Yeah. So the Gemara says, yeah, but you could put water inside a shofar and you could feed it to a baby. It's before child abuse, right? You know, you could put water in a shofar and you can feed it to a baby. Okay. Now, by a show of hands, who would have dreamed of such a shemesh? Not done such a shemesh, because if you raise your hand, then you have to leave, because you're the guy that puts water in a shofar and feeds it to a baby, right? Yeah. But wait. Back in the day, the Hainu, when Yaakov Avinu went derech the Golan Heights to get to Syria and then to Iraq, right, in Haran, and over there, and for the next few years, throughout the time of maybe Shas Bavli, so then, and Taka, it says, Kisrael Karen Shor, why Kisra Karen Shor? Because in the Medrash, they wanted it even for the babies should know, Ein Lechem Chelik Belikei Yisrael, So why Dafka did they write it on the Karen Shor? So there was some mashkichim that came up with a pshat. Because Taka in the Frierdiker Kedar, the Gemara talks about taking milk or water or whatever, putting it in the shofar, and they would give it to the baby, so the baby's bottle was a shofar. That is not true. That's not true. It's a nice vart. It's an emistic vart, but it's not emis. It's a weird thing, very weird thing to feed babies through shofars. Even in Iraq, in Babylonia, circa 385, when Rav Ashi told his wife, no, the kind of bissel Wasser in the shofar, his wife said, "Wash, right? Was? Right? It wasn't normal then, but it was doable. Listen to what I'm saying, Rabbi. I don't think now. You think maybe okay. So in Bavel, it maybe was somewhat normal. Or Taisa says already it wasn't so normal. Taisa says it wasn't normal. In the Rambam's time, was it normal? Can't imagine. In the Ramah's time, was it normal? Throughout the Doiris, was it normal? I don't think so. Certainly in the time of the Navardik or Chashulchan, was it a normal thing? Highly doubt it. So you're going to say, who can know such a thing? So listen, I don't know anything. Yeah, Navardik is not a raya, it's true. But I don't know anything. So there's a person who's 102 years old, he's a great uncle on my other side, on my better half. And he remembers Europe. And I asked him, I said to him, he doesn't like when he's being asked to be like old questions to give us like history from the Haim and things like that, right? So I told him I came to Gemara. And I need you to help me pshat in the Gemara because I know you're a big Talmud Chacham. That's how I asked it, right? I told him, this Gemara talks about a shofar and Taisus talks about giving it to the bottle. And I never saw it. And he's from Europe. I said, maybe in Europe they did it. I didn't mean like maybe in Europe in 1901 or something like that. I meant like maybe in Europe you saw this. Maybe in Europe. Did they give baby bottles with shofar? Right? He told me like B'zeh Hashem, I'm an old man, but I didn't lose it. B'zeh Hashem. I'm an old man, but I think you did. Right? All excited with himself. Right? He told the line to a Filipino. I didn't lose it, but maybe you did. So we have reason to believe that it was extremely weird and never done. I think we all agree to that. Very weird and never done. Just a moment, I haven't said anything yet. I'm just telling you to be my mitzvah. Don't think in Iraq it was normal. Taisus also says it wasn't normal. Don't think in the time of the Rambam it was normal. And 100 years ago it's not normal. It's not normal. It's not normal. In the Mishnah Berurah's time, it was not normal. Okay, so now let's read a shtickle Mishnah. With that knowledge, let's read a shtickle Mishnah Berurah together. Meaning, it doesn't bother me if shofar wasn't a chesron kiss, 100 years ago and 200 years ago and 300 years ago. That can change. That doesn't bother me as much. That can change. That's totally in the mitzvahs of people and whatever. That doesn't bother me. And I told you in my house, I have two shofars. One of them is very, very magbid. One of them is not so magbid. That won't bother me. But what'll bother me is that if let's say I'll read now a Mishnah Berurah and he'll say a shofar is a kli shemalach le'isser 100 years ago. So, well, we know it wasn't the chesron case. That doesn't bother me, but it should at least be the category too. So the Ramah's example over here in Sif Dalit, Ramah says, a shofar, asal l'taltalai, alat tzarech gufay mekaymai. This is repeated in Tafresh Nimches in the Mishnah Berurah. This is repeated in Taf Kuf Peiches. Tafresh Nimches talks about lulav, and he compares lulav to shofar. Taf Kuf Peiches talks about shofar itself. And over there it says, a shofar is a kli shemalach le'isser that you can move the tzarech gufay mekaymai. Says the Mishnah Berurah. He's got in cafe, Mishbur's a few places. He says, which is also Shabbos, and the Mela, it's a Kli Shemlach L'Yisr. He says, the Lulav is not like that. A Lulav isn't a Kli. I have to talk about this. But a Lulav does say Nishkin Kli. It wasn't chiseled, it wasn't fashioned, it wasn't anything. It's just a chefta, it's a stone, it says the Mishbur. It's not a Nishkin Kli. It ain't a Lev Shein Kli. You can't move it now to Guf Mekayma. Mashen a shofar, you could. A shofar, you can move the Guf Mekayma. Why? Because the shofar is a harmonica. And a harmonica is a flute and all these things. If there's not a chesron kiss, so what is it? It's a kli shemlach le'yisr. Now, by say, well, what could you do with a shofar? So what are you going to answer? I know the answer. The answer is that, well, you can put water in it. You can put water in it, but nobody does. Nobody does, right? So look like nobody. I mean, mamish nobody, but nobody does. Nobody at all. In the time of Mishnah Berurah, nobody did. Right? Nobody did. So then, what do you see first in the Mishnah Berurah? Well, you see that the Mishnah Berurah is shita beyond the shadow. I mean, we know already the Mishnah Berurah is shita. I'm saying, but it's not just the Mishabura now. It's anybody who's the Mishabura, Mishabura we know already holds like this. But now it's the Ramah. Now it's anybody who never made this art. So what was my first reaction? It's a kasha when I said to her, what? Good? So now, just a moment. Now, watch. So my first reaction was, I want to go see what it says in the Aruch HaShulchan. That's my first reaction. Now let's talk business, right? Let's talk business. Because the Aruch HaShulchan is going to have a big problem over here now. If the Aruch HaShulchan is going to tell me that a shofar is a klisha malachta eliezer, what's he talking about? Does anybody in the world? It's unbelievable. The Aruch HaShulchan talks about a shofar. It's machtash is vissendik. He just says, yeah, shofar is klisha malachta eliezer, and that's our good makam. Hello? Why? What happened to, Tzarchi and Gadol? Anybody have an answer? What's a Pala Gedola? He says a shofar is a klisha malachta eliezer. Why? It's at least category 2, right? And I shouldn't be allowed to move it. Not l'tzarek gufa, not l'tzarek makam. He says, "First, you're allowed to move it." What? That just means children are allowed to do the isser. It means they're not mechinuch. That gets involved. The boy spoke about like children's toys or like the issers or whatever. And you see from Chazal not like that because Chazal had to come on to putting water in it, right? So now I think maybe there's a way out of this kasha. It's a very important kasha. What I'm asking. Everybody appreciate the kasha? If you don't appreciate the kasha, then leave. Right? Does anybody not appreciate the kasha? Right? Well, Dovi, I'll kick you out. I don't care. Oh, so he wants to know what's the difference between that and a hammer. Teretz says, there's no shaykhs. A hammer it's a very normal thing to be using hammers to crack open things, to break things. You just don't have things to crack. Right?
So it's not normal.
Sorry?
So then it becomes not normal. Who cracks things?
No. So let me explain. Watch. But again, we needed the hammer to pry open the window, right? I'm just showing you it is something that it could come up the use, and no one would say, wow, that's outrageous. Everyone would say, get that. What did we do when we had the issue over here? We got a hammer, right? There's a whole niggin about it, Alta Medrash, if I had a hammer. What? No, nobody's using that because we just crack it. But not because Chesed kids, it's not, we crack it. But a hammer is something that if somebody has some usage, he would use it, right? If he has something that he needs to, where it's not going to be an isser, he would use a hammer. So therefore, of course, a hammer has other usages, and therefore it doesn't make strange, right? Machenkin, a shofar is like a very strange thing, right? Nobody in the world is going to put water in, okay? No, the tais is what? That could be because it's going in Rabbi Yehuda. I don't want to get involved in that. That's going in Rabbi Yehuda. It's B'chal not a kasha. That answers up Rabbi Kiveger also. But can you spend me a cup if you don't mind? Thank you. Well, not one of the dirty, scary-looking ones. It's not. Don't drink out of it. Now so I'm going to tell you an answer. I must tell you this answer is probably the answer, and because it's probably the answer, it's probably not a raya to what we spoke about. Therefore, I won't have a raya anymore from what I mentioned for the Rabbi, but that's looking the emes, right? I have to say the emes. You really do have a steer in the Aruch HaShulchan. I think the kash is a tais. I think I made a tais, but you're going to see from here an incredible. No, it's okay. Yes. No, forget. Right, but you're going to see from over here an incredible, like a lichtigkeit, mamish a lichtigkeit. It's a gewaltige lichtigkeit in Sugya, right? You drank from this. I love you. I'm only doing it for the bracha, but I didn't want to avatal Torah. Now, Rabbi say, watch this. All the Achronim. I once asked Rav Scheinberg, Zeichet Tzadik Levracha, do we hold of this category too? He said to me, the Mishabura holds not like that. We don't hold like it. He wouldn't even listen. I told him, Kiveger, you wrote books about Rabbi Kiveger, Mishabura, Aruch HaShulchan, Mishabura. Hey, nothing. Right? Nothing. He wouldn't budge. Mishabura. We don't know the category two. I told him you have to be machmir. No. Right? You do like it says in the Mishabura. That's what he said. I thought, what I say with all the what? All the cast. What? Let me be machmir. Right? He told me it can't be, you have to be machmir. What was his biggest thing? Why it can't be, you have to be machmir the shayla? The biggest right. What was his biggest right? The Mishabura is right and everybody else is wrong? Because the Achronim would have had to have told us a getter of what, listen closely. This is something we didn't talk about yet. the Achrayim would have had to give us a geder of what is considered a usage. Because we see like paperweight is nishkenuk, right? They would have had to give me a geder and told me, kli shemalachta iser that you use for epis something, then that's already called the kli shemalachta iser. But if it's a kli shemalachta iser that you don't use for anything, that's his category 2, that turns into gufa. Now somebody would have had to have told me what's the epis, because I'm not going to know what the epis is. Because every item in the world I could use for a paperweight. And they see vice that's not enough. Okay? Watch. We're getting back to my shaila, but watch. So then, so I started looking around to find out what's taka together. What's together for those that are machmir? Okay, right now, let's go into the mind of people that are going to be machmir on this category 2. We're not. But whoever's going to be machmir on this shaila of category 2, what are they going to consider yes to be a kli shemalachta li'isr? And what are they going to say no, she has no usage? Okay, because everything you can use for a paperweight, right? So I saw like this. I saw a very big machlekes here. There's for example, I saw in the Art Scroll book, he brings down Mamash Rabbi Akiva Eiger about this question. So that's great. Now you know what to do. Rabbi Akiva Eiger, he brings Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Who's Rabbi Akiva Eiger? Rabbi Akiva Eiger is the one who's machmir, right? So Rabbi Akiva Eiger says, anything that's a tashmish haragil, anything that's the normal usage of the item, it's a normal thing to do, then she's still a kli shemalachta yeser. Like a hammer to crack a coconut, I know that's normal. Anything else, once it's not normal, once it's abnormal, so then already she's not a kli shemalachta yeser. Now it's already abnormal. That's already going to be considered, michutz lamachan, and that's muksa machmas gufay. Right? This is the biggest tayis in the sefer. It's impossible what I just said. Right? No, what I just said is absolutely impossible. It's impossible. If that's the case, Rabbi said every kli shemalachta li'isr, berega it's a normal usage. She's a kli shemalachta li'isr v'heter. It's impossible. Don't try to understand it because it's impossible. It's an avera to understand this. Right? He's saying any time there's a kli shemalachta li'isr, there's an abnormal usage of it, then that's not a kli shemalachta li'isr anymore. That's a category. Rabbi said every single thing that goes on in Hilchos Muktzah of the kli shemalachta li'isr is not its normal usage. It's not the normal usage to take hammers and crack open coconuts. So I looked at Rabbi Akiva Eiger, not believing that it could be such a thing. The answer is Rabbi Akiva Eiger does say it. He says it in the sheet of Rabbi Nechemia. Rabbi Nechemia is the shita that has a gemartik chumra and muksa that enkli nittel el tzarich davar nittel. You're only allowed to move kalim for their own tzarich. I know he's saying meful rash Rabbi Akiva Eiger that this is not the agdara of the kli shemalachta li'isr. This is out. So you got to look weiter. So what's next? And I'm not going to be ma'arich on that because it's not shaykh. There's a letter from the Chazain Ish in the 23rd letter, and he has these igris over there. So he writes a lashon like this. He writes, because I saw one sefer. He says if you use a kli, there's a sefer called the Shalmei Yonason in Hilchos Muktzah. So he brings this letter. I didn't know this letter except from him. So he brings this letter, and he writes the letter that the Chazon Ish says that anytime you do a meshunadik tashmish, a strange type of a usage with the kli, that's not going to take it out of the realm of category 2. What'll take her out of the realm of category 2? If you're doing something which is somewhat normal, but something which is strange, no, that's no good. Because with every item, you could do something strange. So he says, if it's something that it's somewhat normal, now we're getting somewhere, right? Somewhat normal, then she's a kli shemalachta li'isr. If it's strange, so then that'll be this hagdara that it's ois kli legamrei. And this is also, I find strange. Why do I find this strange? Well, a shofar is normal. You're telling me in Iraq it was normal to take water and put water into, it's not normal. It's totally not normal. It's not normal. So I have a Sephardi neighbor, right next to me over there. Right. So he's an older person. He's from Morocco. His wife is from Fez. Right. So I figured maybe in Iraq it was normal. I don't know. He told me, can't tell me, doesn't know what went on. And 500 years ago and 300 years ago, he said, but, his mother never fed him with a shofar and a bottle and this and that. And, so he said his wife, she had like mamish a lot of money in Morocco, so she's not a raya, but we lived in poverty. And so by us, if anybody was going to be using a bottle out of a shofar, it would have been us. Right? And then his wife screamed out, there's nicht gehad Geld up, in Hebrew. Afilu lo yelem pruta grush bishvil shofar, mit aber shofar. Lo yelem kesef bishvil shofar. So maybe it's not a raya. They didn't have money for a shofar, but you get my point. Is it weird? Is it downright strange and downright strange? So this can't be pshat either, right? Can't be pshat either. But I can't argue on the Chazon Ish. I can't argue on the Chazon Ish. In other words, if I'm going to show you the Chazon Ish says it, so then I'm wrong and I have to readjust my brain. And if the Chazon Ish will tell you that when you're doing something weird, meshuna, then that doesn't take it out. That doesn't give it the shem kli. It has to be something somewhat normal. That's the. So I looked in the Chazon Ish. He says pum fakir pum. Exact opposite mamish. He says if something is meshuna, then she's still a kli shemachta. I have no idea how this happened, but that's what it says there. He says if something is meshuna, and then it's a kli shemachta liyeser. He says every kli shemachta liyeser, the gufais are meshuna. It's not the normal usage of the kli. It's meshuna. It's meshuna. It's a weird thing. He says if something is, he writes a lashon there. It's like maguna b'bnei adam. They look at it and they say, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Like it's weird." And there's a level of meshuna, and then there's a like that's insane. This level insane. So he says then that's already going to go into the Agdara of a kli shemalachta li'isser that has no tzarich kufa, no tzarich mekaymai. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. I still have a little bit of an issue because the shofar is still like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What? It's a weird thing. It's maguna and weird and still weird and still, it's like more than weird. Weird is okay. It's whoa weird, right? It's weird squared. This is mud in the mensch, right? What are you doing, right? So, okay, but we're getting somewhere at least with Agdara. No, my point is I'm proving you first of all Rav Scheinberg. Rav Scheinberg told us they would have had to give Agdara. You see how hard we're trying to work, right? So I saw Rav Shlomo Zalman. Okay, it's going to be hard. Rav Shlomo Zalman in the Shmir Shabbos, Ari Yudalid, what did I write here? In the Shulchan Shlomo, Ari Yudalid, he said, I don't know, he doesn't give Agdara. He just says something which I just don't know what to tell you. He says, a fan, that'll be category 2. Nothing to do with a fan. He says, a car key, that's not category 2. Right? Anybody know? A fan in the Bachar Dira, a fan is like, what do they use a fan for, right? You use it to hang the clothing on. They use it to, you hold open the door with the fan all the time, right? A fan, right? A fan you could use half the Bachar use for a bed. What? No, I'm not saying that a car keys I would understand either. Car keys I can understand. Derech Agav, I could open it with my eyelids. So yeah. But but a fan. Why is a fan something that's meshuna? Why is a fan something that's meshuna? I don't know. So I can't understand it. I don't have a kasha. I'm not asking. I would have said fakir. I just don't understand fan. So I don't know the Agdara. I don't know. I know. Oh, so now you're going to get into trouble. Then I saw in the Sefer Orcha Shabbos, in the 19th parak in Oizayin, 19th parak Oizayin, this is very, very, very strange. He writes over there like this. He writes a washing machine. Now listen closely, because I'm going to tell you something. It's one of the most important lumdisim that you can hear today. And there's a lot of lumdis there, but listen closely. Okay? A washing machine, he says, a washing machine depends if it's category 2. He says, what does it depend on? Depends on you. If you're the type of person that uses your washing machine as a hamper also, you'll take the clothing and you'll put it into the washing machine, until it gets used. So then you're the type of person that uses the washing machine. So then, Mamela, for you, a washing machine is going to be klisha maktal yeser. It'll be mutal tzar guf makayim. It says, Mashenkin, if you're the type of person that never uses it, then the only thing you use it for, that means what's the only thing in the world the washing machine could do for you is wash. So then, she's a klisha maktal yeser with no tzar gufa, no tzar makayim. So. This is inherently a tayis. I want you to understand this. It's a very, 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 very important tayis. Listen closely. Notice it's mamish an important tayis. The whole musig, listen closely, this is a big, big, big tayis. The whole musig, who chaps already what the tayis is? I'm so upset.
Some people just love it so
Thank you. You say it. You do it. You want to say it? What? Who else on the chaps with the tayis is? There's a tayis gomer. Huh? You say it. Why should I say it? What? It's a tayis. It's not stam a tayis, right? It's a dreadful tayis. Right? Listen, Rabbi say, the whole musig of chisarin kiss is totally in you. If you are makbid and you are not, so then you are makbid, then she's a chisarin kiss. If you are not makbid, she's not a chisarin kiss. the ganz musig of category 2 is we're trying to figure out, does it have a potential tashmish? I don't care if you actually do that tashmish or not. Rabbi say, there's no question in the world that a hammer in my house, like you guys are saying, has never, ever, ever been used for anything else except to hit the nails and whatever. And there's no shaila in the world that a hammer is a kli shemalachta l'yasser. There never was, there never will be, there never should be, there never could be. It's an avera to even think about it, right? Because why? Because she's a kli who's malachta l'yasser, and I'm not makbid to not do something else. And there are other potential usages. It happens to be, I don't have those usages. It happens to, and there are usages that the Welt has, and et cetera, et cetera. When we are donning on the Shem Kli Shemalachta L'Isser category 2, what are we donning on? We're trying to figure out, is this a Kli Shemalachta L'Isser that has no other potential usage, like this recorder, that there is nothing else you could do with her, or a candle, that there is nothing else that you could do with her. So then she's a kli shemalachta l'yasser, has no tzrachim at all. The leichter of the Aruch HaShulchan, the simple leichter, without the chesed leichter. The simple leichter of Rabbeinu the Aruch HaShulchan was something, there's nothing you could do with her. So therefore, the only thing you could do with her is this. It said the Aruch HaShulchan that doesn't give it a shem kli. Okay, but Mashain came. Berega, you admit that there is a usage, but you don't use it for that. Of course, it's a kli shemalachta l'yasser. Of course, it's a kli shemalachta l'yasser. The fact that you don't use, you are only a parsha when we're discussing kipeda. Then you have the ability to have your input. Are you makbid? Are you not makbid? So I am makbid on my driver's license, and you are not makbid on your driver's license. So for me, it's a chesaron kiss, and for you, it's not a chesaron kiss. But if I have an item like a leichter that there's nothing you could do with it, that's our needin. But if I have an item like a hammer, and I don't use it for that, or not because I'm makbid, because I don't need to use it, or I never wind up using it for that. But the same kli shemalachta l'yasser does yo. It's a kli shemalachta l'yasser, and it has a shima shalet. Of course, it has a shima shalet. So then I would say that is 100% a toyis. That can't be the agdara. That can't be the agdara. That's why I would say I said that over because somebody asked the question. Nobody wants to say who he was now, right? But somebody asked the question. Well, the hammer. Oh. So Rabbi say, so now, what's the Hagdara? So I think the Aruch HaShulchan is miramis to the Hagdara. Rabbi say, I think the Aruch HaShulchan answers this question. If you're machmer on category 2, what's the Hagdara? The Hagdara is it something that even strange as anything, more than the Chazon Ish, right? And even certainly, Shima Sharagama, as long as it has a usage that no one will do. As long as it has a usage that no one will do, that you're using the kli to do, no one's going to do it. Then the Aruch HaShulchan will even agree already. That's a shayfer. Could you put water in a shayfer? Yes. Has anybody ever did it? No. Who cares? It's a shimush that you could do. Who says that? The Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan says a shayfer is an example of a kli shemalachta l'yasser. What's not an example? A leichter. Because a leichter, there is nothing you can do with it. What are you going to do? There's nothing to do. Right? There's nothing. Oh, it's Elamite. Now, scratching your back and paperweight and everything. Kanira, you have to say that this is a chiddush. I'm just explaining now the Chashulchan. Kanira, you have to say, which, the Mishnah Berurah obviously argues on this because he argues on the whole category 2. The whole category 2 is based on the premise. If the only usage of the item is klape, its weight and its cheftzekite, its mitziaskite, but not the shimush in the item alone, so then that's not going to take it and give it a shame of a usage. That's what you have to say. I'm not making this up, right? Because otherwise, there's no category 2. Because every item in the world you could use. So the Aruch HaShulchan missed the boat. Because every item in the world that I'm certainly not makbid on, I can just do like that and make it into a paperweight, right? So the Aruch HaShulchan missed it. So what's the answer? Obviously, the Aruch HaShulchan is telling you is that if the weight is the gans shimush of the item. Now, I saw something in the Aruch HaShabbos which I liked. It was interesting, right? No, I'm saying about this. I saw something interesting. He said, let's say he goes with category 2. You should be makbid in category 2. And he says, however, paperweight can't be enough of a reason because everything has a paperweight. This is in the Aruch HaShabbos in Yud Chav Aleph. He says, but let's say you have something that's on the table that you always use as a paperweight. I like that shot. You have your recorder on the table, so you always wind up using it as a paperweight. So then you could hear that the item is not just its weight, right? At first I was going to argue on this. At first I was going to say, what do you mean? If you learn that category 2 says that we don't reckon with weight, so then weight is not a shimush. But I'm beginning to hear a little bit this svara. I'm beginning to hear it a little bit. He doesn't explain that. I imagine this is what he means. He says if you have an item on the table that you always use, so then yes, that could be considered a shimush. But to just say that I have, let's say you have a place where the recorder, you keep it in your bag or whatever, and it's never on the table or something like that. Right? So then the Kai government is never used as a paperweight. So then Kanira, those that hold of category 2 hold that it has to be a shimush in the item, not the weight of the item, not that which is not miyuchas to the item itself. So to take the item and scratch your back with it is not miyuchas to the. Now, sometimes you have a very comfortable leichter. Dafka goes in there, gets into all the nooks and crannies and all the little, the Mekayim store, and you see that guy in the mikvah, man, he's got like all these weird things and whatever. The next day you see a guy's got a leichter, he's got a leichter, talking about, right? Hope not. So then, so then the guy governor, we could talk. Maybe that would become a klishim lachta yeser. That would be having a tzarech of it. So if you ask me, you have to be machmer and the shayin look of ein look. You've seen from all the paiskim that nobody gave us a clear agdara, and the only agdara that we have from the biggest machmer in the topic is the Aruch HaShulchan, who told us a shofar still remains a kli shem lachta yeser. So and no one drinks out of a shofar. But it is possible, and it would be a shimush, and I guess because it has like a clay kibble or something. I was kind of thinking that today the world is like an interesting place, and like I'm sure somebody with so much shtick in the Welt today. It's like somebody will take the lighter and say, "Hey, I got a great idea. I can put inside there jelly beans and and whatever. You can put things in there. Hey, it's a really good idea, right? Or you're gonna all types of weird sticky things. So it could be that that eventually even the Aruch HaShulchan will agree. But I guess until that comes, right? So then a candle. There is nothing, the Aruch HaShulchan will tell you, there's nothing you could do with a candle. There's nothing you could do with it, right? There's just nothing you could do with it, right? I mean, anybody think of anything besides the shemesh of it? What? You could take the wick and use it as floss. But if that's the case, you have big gaps between your teeth, and therefore you don't need floss. Yeah. But anyways, Chamoira, what the next example will be Aspire Brothers. So, with the Chmonas of Yid. But we'll talk after. We'll meet after. No, but you understand, a shofar is something that there's a shimush that you could do mitzad the receptacle. No one does. Who cares? Right? You could carry water in it. So that's the answer. Therefore, it has a shame plea because it could theoretically doing it. So this is not like the Chazanish, and it's not like the art's going. This is not like Rosh Hashanah. A fan is the only reason it's not like Rosh Hashanah. First of all, a fan, you have that Hagdar of the Aruch Shabbos. That's a very normal thing to hold open doors because it's a tall item that you have and whatever. And also people definitely you can hang a shirt on it, and even if you don't, but people do, and that's what it's totally in. Is it something that it's not upgefragt? It's an upgefragt shimush. It's not an upgefragt shimush. It's not something that doesn't have a shimush to it. It does have a shimush to it, right? So therefore, I could think maybe Ulai Rosh Hashanah will tell you, but that's not a shimush in the kli, like that. Chedusha maybe, like that. What? Like one of these like Duvi fans. Maybe that. Yeah, that would be a good example. That would be. He didn't have that. What? Because you could do. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about things that were charged before Shabbos and batteries and all these things. We do have to. We certainly do have to get it, but we didn't start today. We have to get to the Gufay. What time? Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Now, this is a disaster. Oh my goodness! No, the article writes that a phone is a category 2. He doesn't mean like an expensive phone, chesrin kiss, or whatever. He says a phone is a cell phone. A cell phone. You use it for alarm clock. Why is that? Why is that no shimush? What? Give me one more sec. I'll answer you after 1 sec. Rabbi side. We didn't do anything today. I don't know what to do. Tomorrow, Rabbi side, we have to start goof. You got to do Vav Zayin today, and just. But the Shevet Levi in Tess. Rabbi side. The Shevet Levi in Tess Kuf Chav Zayin Dalid. He has an aura there. He doesn't believe in the Kli Shem Lachta Yisr category 2 stuff. He's not impressed by this. You could see over there. But just the aura he has. he's also bothered by a shofar, the Ha'ar of shofar. He seems to show you that, I don't know, I'm going to say a thought over here. I'm going to say a thought. We'll end with this, and then Mitzvah Shem tomorrow, Nusagya. Nusagya is Gufa, and then Nusagya. But one last thought, and then this ends us with all the Kalim and Lachtas. One last thought. The shofar thing bothers me a lot, right? I don't know. I'm more careful than my shofar than the Ramah was. It's sure. I told you the Shmir Shabbos told us that a shofar, if you're very careful with it, he doesn't even give you the option. He says everyone's very careful with a shofar, and therefore she's a chesron kiss. And it changed. Today it changed. And the Mishabura, it changed in the time of the Mishabura, because the Mishabura still held there was a Klish Machal Yeser. And there are Chashulchan, no one over all the Doiris. There's a Mogen Avram in Taf Kuf Pei Ches, and in Taf Rich Nun Ches. There's a Taz, there's a Mogen Avram, there's an Aruch Shulchan. I don't know. When I grew up, Bobby was always telling us that in the Haim, they were much more careful than we are and everything. Right? You're telling me that I'm more careful with the shofar than the Svalya Rebbe, Zeicher Tzadik Avulche, Schisse Yagin Leinival, Kol Yisrael Neymar Amein, Dalt Zaida. I don't think so. What? Everything costs money. Then everything was cost more money. Bread costs more money because you didn't have money. When you don't have money, bread costs more money. You understand the law on this? When you have zero, so then bread costs a lot of money, right? If you have something, then bread. Or if you're in Chayfus, anyways. But what? Moving around is not enough because I also practice Milah. You go to East Jerusalem and find some chevra. What? Sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. I made you laugh. No. Huh? No. I mean just stam chasar and kiss of a shofar. Are you telling me that he's makbid not to? No, but by side a shofar. Whoa, wait! I don't understand my kasha. A shofar is a great example because even then there was nothing they did with a shofar. That's what we spent the whole day trying to figure out. There was nothing they actually did with a shofar, anyways, right? So now, Elamai, you're telling me there's nothing they did. It's not like they were using shofars to crack coconuts and whatever because they had less kalim. They weren't doing anything. We spent the whole day trying to figure out what the world they were doing with a shofar in the first place, right? What? No. So one second, Rabbi said, I'm new. So I'm just saying they didn't use the shofar for anything, and you're telling me that I am more makbid about my shofar than they are. So I don't know. The Shevet Levi in Tes Kuf Chav Zayin, I can't say this is what he's coming to answer. He was the one that opened me up to the idea. I just wonder out loud if a shofar is a Klish Machal Yeser. I just wonder out loud. And I then what's a pshat? I am a makbid not to use it for anything else and whatever. So let's think here. What were the examples of chesron kiss? Let's say like a document, a check, or something that you're afraid something's going to happen to it. Things that we all agreed upon. Let's say in this room. What else did we agree upon? What else is a good example? The Mila knife, because something can happen to it, it can get damaged. So therefore, you leave it in its place and you never move it and whatever. What else? What? The guy, if it's stone, we said because that maybe you'll show people. But what else? Figurines. Your figurines. A stamp. A stamp is something that can happen to it. Or we said maybe a painting, if the pshat is you're afraid that when you move it, it's going to break something. So you can leave it in that place. Whatever, all the things we spoke about. Or the painting itself, if she's expensive or whatever. Let's say a shofar. I mean, does anybody think at all twice about, taking a shofar and blowing the shofar and playing with the shofar and showing people how they use the shofar and whatever? Right? I won't give it to a kid, Rabbi said, because I don't want the kid breaking my shofar. That doesn't mean she's a chesron kiss. I just don't want you breaking my things, right? Even my things that aren't chesron kids, I don't want you breaking my screwdriver either, right? I don't want you, so that's not a raya. So Elamai, maybe it's like, I don't know, I'm saying now a little bit of a chiddush. But maybe there's a chiddush over here in chesron kiss that we never spoke out. Maybe if you have an item that you don't think twice before you use. So if the kids will say, Tati, could you blow the shofar? You don't even think twice. If the kids will say, Tati, could you show us how you do a shchita? Tati, could you show us how you do a shchita? You're going to start thinking twice, taking out the knife. You're going to be very careful with the knife. You're nervous about the knife. I don't know. Maybe there's something here that a shofar is something that I don't think twice about it. If somebody wants to just take a shofar and blow the shofar and blow stam, maybe that's the Agdara. Maybe that's like there. I definitely don't think twice. If somebody asks me, I don't let the kids play with the shofar because I don't want them breaking my shofar because kids will break a shofar, right? But why is that doima? Mashenkein, the case of the painting, I say, no, leave it there. I don't want it to move, right? And the case of the stamps, no, don't be careful with the stamp because I don't want it to get ruined. If it gets ruined, you won't be able to use it, right? There's a certain hergish of its being ruined that therefore I try not to move it. Even a camera, to a certain extent, the camera to a certain extent, I don't know, I was thinking of this, maybe a camera. I don't know. The camera, I'm a little bit, maybe the camera, you're a bit more scared. What? Yeah, I don't know. Well, it definitely depends on the person. But I'm just showing you that I don't believe, no. Rabbi say, what you have to figure out, I'm sorry, I'll end with this. What you have to figure out is if the Ramah was, Rabbi say, if the Ramah on a shofar, let's say my Metzias is right. So then you have to figure this out. If the Ramah was just as makbid as Rabbi Kallus is on a shofar, which I do not believe he wasn't. I believe we're about the same. If I believe I'm the same as somebody in the whole picture over there. All the poskim that ever lived and ever will live until the Shmir Shabbos Gilchos, and no one said this. So you tell me, all changed in that second. It's a pella. So if I'm right that it didn't change and it's the same Metzias, so now you just have to use that to be magdir why it's not a chesron kiss, which I'm giving you a possible thought. Maybe a chesron kiss is something that the person thinks twice, right? The person thinks twice before because, he's afraid something's going to happen to it. So he'd rather not blow it if he doesn't have to. I don't know. See this, it'll come out an unbelievable chiddush, like the item's asking, that maybe a camera and possibly even a phone, maybe this won't be a chesron kiss. I don't know. I'm leaving it as aura, something to think about. I just want to make one comment here. Just one comment, one little comment over here. You all love Rabbi Kallus. I know that, right? And you all would like that Rabbi Kallus should be healthy and be able to give all the shiur that he gives. And therefore, Rabbi Kallus heard the unfortunate news today that he does not have antibodies. Right? And therefore, until now, I was always philosophical on the fact that, maybe B'safek and B'chesed Hashem, I also have antibodies. But now I found out that I don't have antibodies. Now, therefore, I know there's a lot of shittas about corona and all these shittas, but that's all good for you guys that are young and that don't have lung issues like myself. So you guys could all have your shittas. I don't mean you, I mean the Gansevel. You can have shittas and everything, but not on my cheshbon. Not on my cheshbon, right? And this is, again, you could keep every shitta you want. I'll even help you and, Biden, we're still on Zoom. So, but nicht for president. Okay. But nachals, you want Rabbi Kallus to be healthy. So therefore, around